Hello, guys, and welcome to the Brit Wit podcast, your go-to place for everything Great Britain. I'm your host, Kasper Hermann, and with me I have fellow UK experts, Casper Barnes.
Hello.
And Cecilia Rose.
Hello.
Today we'll start off a 3-episode series by talking a little about the Welsh history, geography, language, and much more.
So, let's get right into it. The territory, which is now known as Wales, has been inhabited by people of the human species for thousands of decades. The first hereof being the Neanderthal man. In prehistoric times, Wales was inhabited by the Celtic, and it was later under Roman rule. It wasn't until the Anglo-Saxons advanced into England, however, that the Welsh were officially separated from the Celtics. This was marked by the English by Great Rampart in the end of the 8th century.
A few decades later, in the year 1282, the English king Edward I occupied Wales. He shipped in English settlers who moved into the castles which Edward had built. The English exploited the Welsh people, collecting taxes from them and limiting their domain, thus turning the Welsh population into second-class citizens. Ever since then, Wales was no longer an independent nation. Even then, though the administrative language was English, the liturgical language was kept as Welsh. In 1542, in accordance to the Welsh Acts, Wales' legacy became a part of the Kingdom of England. And when the crowns of England and Scotland were united in 1603, Wales naturally became a part of the Union as it was already under the English crown.
Since 1999, Wales has been partly self-sufficient. This is due to the devolution in 98, in which Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales were all given their own governments. The main government of the UK is still centred in London, however this changed it so that the separate countries gained more power to rule over themselves.
Wales is a peninsula. It lies on the west side of England and its population encompasses just over 3 million people, with a modest density of around 14 people per square kilometre. This is a quite low density around when compared to that of England, where the average density is around 427 people per square kilometre. However, the density in Wales is higher than in both Scotland and Ireland. In 2016, Wales made up 8.4% of the UK's landmass, but only 4.8% of its population.
2/3 of the Welsh population live in the southern parts of the country, which is also where the capital of the country, Cardiff, is found. Cardiff is placed near the southeastern coast of Wales and has a population of around 335,000 people, thereby housing more than 10% of the country's population.
93.2% of the population of Wales is considered British, with British designating people of both British and Welsh ethnicity. Of the 93.2%, equivalenting to around 2.8 million people, 1.9 million identify themselves as Welsh, whereas the rest identify themselves as British. The largest ethnic minority in the country is the Irish, who represent 0.6% of the population. Other ethnicities make up even smaller percentages of the population. Most of the population speak English, many with a Welsh accent. However, only around 29% of the country's population speak the native language of Welsh. This number increases to over 50%, however, if you look only at the outlying districts of the country.
In contrast to England and Scotland, Wales do not have any officially approved church. However, according to a study from 2011, you can find around the same religious spectrum in Wales as in the rest of Great Britain. This being mainly Christians who make up around 59.9%, Muslims who make up around 4.4%, and Hindus who make up around 1.3%. Over 32% of the Welsh population does not identify themselves with any religion.
The Welsh flag, the Red Dragon, was officially approved in 1959. The dragon is an old Welsh emblem, and the flag has been unofficially in use since around 1911. It's the only flag of the United Kingdom's countries not to be represented in the Union Jack.
That was all for today, y'all. We hope you'll tune in next week where we'll learn a little about the social conditions, economy and labour market of Wales, among other things. Until then, though, stay curious. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the BritVid podcast. Today we'll pick up from where we left off and talk a bit about the Welsh economy, labour market, and social conditions. Casper, do you want to start off?
Sure thing. So, in the early 18th century, the country of Wales took its first steps into being an industrial nation under the rule of Queen Elizabeth I. In the start of the 19th century, the population of England and Wales was only at around 8.9 million when combined, but that number grew massively over the next 50 years, and in 1851 the number had reached 17.9 million. As the size of the population grew, so too did the need for materials. This need, combined with the modern technologies, ultimately led to the industrialization of the entirety of Great Britain. And as a result of this, society and its structure completely changed, not just for England, but for Wales too. By 1851, Wales had managed to become the world's second leading industrial nation, behind no one but England. Today, Wales continues to be a modern nation. However, it has not maintained its position as a leading industrial nation.
While the country's economy is one of the fastest growing of all UK regions and nations, it still underperforms economically when compared to the British neighbours. The country only makes up 3.3% of the United Kingdom's total gross domestic product, with a gross domestic product per capita of just £21,900. That's a remarkably low number if you compare it to Scotland of 28,900 and southeastern England of 33,900. In fact, it is the lowest gross domestic per capita in the entirety of the United Kingdom. This is mainly due to the low employment rate and low average wages. The unemployment rate of Wales as a whole sits at around 4.9% of the workforce. While that is higher than both England and Denmark, the difference is quite minor. If we look only at the country's capital though, the story is a little different, as the unemployment rate in Cardiff is at 6.8%, and it's higher than any other place in Wales. The number increases to 9% of Cardiff's workforce if we look only at the female population. When looking at the country as a whole, however, unemployment is split equally between men and women.
In 2017, the weekly earnings in Wales were £579 on average, whereas the United Kingdom average was £663. This makes the weekly earnings of Wales the lowest in all of the United Kingdom. But how come Wales has gone from being a leading industrial nation to highly underperforming among its British neighbours?
Well, up until the latter half of the 20th century, the Welsh economy was comprised mainly of agriculture and heavy industry, such as coal mining, oil refining, and traditional manufacturing. However, as with most European regions, the heavy industry component of the country has declined, whereas services have increased. Nonetheless, manufacturing in 2016 still made up 11% of total employment, but it is now more focused on higher tech sectors such as aerospace, automotive, and electronics. The composition of firms in Wales is similar to that of the UK as a whole, with large firms accounting for around 38% of total employment compared to the 40% of the UK.
The public sector makes a large contribution to gross domestic production in areas such as health and education. The percentage of public sector employees in Wales is higher than the UK average, sitting just below 10%. However, the growth in private sector employment has been greater than in public sector employment over the last 10 years.
Wales has a significant regional variations in economic structure and performance. Cardiff, the northern and southern coastal belts, and even some rural parts of Wales have experienced the most significant increase in employment. In the meantime, employment rates of the valleys of South Wales, traditionally reliant on the mining industry, has declined. Generally, employment and earnings are higher in urban areas and in East Wales, with its good connections to the economic environment of the Bristol area, the West Midlands, and London.
Now, let's talk a little about Welsh work life. According to Wales.com, people in Wales have a maximum working week of around 48 hours, with most people working just 37 hours a week, all while getting at least 5.6 weeks of leave per year. All in all, Wales takes pride in being a nation where it's possible to have a healthy work-life balance. However, living in Wales also means that you have to pay the same weight of taxes that you'll find in both England and Northern Ireland. Those being a basic rate of 20% when earning more than around £12,000 a year, a higher rate of 40% when you earn more than around £46,000 a year, and a so-called additional rate at 45% total if you have an income of over £150,000 a year.
Currently, the average house price in Wales is £144,000, whereas the UK average is £216,000. Therefore, Wales has some of the lowest living costs of the entire United Kingdom. Most of the population also enjoy quite a high standard of living, partly because, as it's the case of any citizens in the United Kingdom, the people of Wales are under insurance of the NHS, the National Health Service, which provides free healthcare as a basic right to anyone residing in UK. Education in Wales is moreover compulsory from the age of 5 to the age of 16.
Well, I think that is all we had time for today, y'all. But we hope to see you again next week, where we'll talk a little about the political system of Wales as well as the Welshman's opinion on Brexit. Till then, though, stay curious. Hello guys, and welcome back to the Brit Bit podcast. Today is our last episode of a mini-series about Wales. If you have been following along, you'll know that it's time for us to talk about the political system of Wales as well as the Welsh look at the Brexit. I believe you would like to start, Rose.
Yeah, sure. Now, since Wales is a constituent unit of the United Kingdom, foreign relations and many of Wales' domestic matters are determined in London by the British government and the Parliament's House of Commons, which consists of both English, Scottish, Northern Irish and Welsh politicians. The National Assembly of Wales, established in 1999 in Cardiff, assumed several responsibilities including urban and rural development, economic planning, health, welfare, culture, education and more.
Up until 2011, Wales needed approval from the British Parliament for primary lawmaking. However, after the approval of a referendum that year, this is not the case anymore. Today, Wales is able to pass laws on all subjects within a multitude of areas, independently of the British Parliament. Wales's local government consists of 22 governmental units, 14 counties and 8 county boroughs. These are responsible for all major governmental functions including local planning, local service, libraries, schools, public health and much more.
After the Brexit election in 2016, 72.2% of the Welshmen entitled to vote went to the polls. Not a bad number. Of these voters, 52.5% voted in favour of leaving the European Union, making Wales the only country other than England to vote in favour of leaving. The Welsh numbers were, moreover, very similar to those of England, where 53.4% of voters voted in favour of leaving. In fact, the people of Wales were closer to a 50-50 than any other UK country, as well as closer to the UK average of 51.9%.
Well, aren't these numbers flabbergasting, you think?
Well, this certainly should not come as a big surprise. It is no secret that many of Wales' inhabitants, specifically those in South Wales, feel left behind by the system. The Wales are notable for their strong Welsh identity. The people who live there often work traditional jobs, and as mentioned, these Welsh are where we find the majority of the Welsh-speaking population. It might seem odd waiting to opt out a partnership which secures you a large amount of economic aid. However, it would seem that the majority of Welshmen would gladly give up this aid if it brings an end to the free travel. You see, there is perhaps with good reason a common idea that immigration is what has ultimately brought Wales to the state it is today. I believe that immigrations are driving down the wage of locals.
Most of the Welsh working class population do not realize the benefits of being in the European Union. Analysis show that the areas of Britain with the most elderly and those with the fewest graduates were way more likely to vote in favour of leaving. These descriptions fit the people of rural Wales well, which is probably why the votes were given the way they were.
And I believe that unfortunately concludes our 3-week series on the country Wales. Thank you all for joining us and listening along from back home. Hopefully we have piqued your interest in the country and maybe even changed your view on it. If you're interested, I highly recommend visiting the country. The nature there is quite spectacular. Next week we will take a closer look at the fascinating history of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and we hope to see you there. If not though, this has been your host, Casper Harman, joined by the wonderful Cecilia Rose.
Bye bye!
And Casper Barnes.
Bye bye!
Thanks for listening, and remember, stay curious.